Miami Condo Mondays is a live podcast on the first workday of the week at 4 p.m. South Florida time. The program features former journalist and current Wall Street consultant Peter Zalewski of the Miami Condo Investing Club and former lender and veteran condo broker Jenny Huertas of CVRealty.com. Recorded weekly in greater downtown Miami, this 1-hour discussion will provide a refreshing and sometimes controversial perspective on the state of the South Florida condo market from a pair of seasoned real estate professionals who do not always agree. The program won't tell you what to think about the South Florida condo market, but will give you something to think about before buying, selling, taking listings, or financing units. This podcast is not authorized by the Miami real estate industry and will quite possibly annoy many of its figureheads. Welcome to this week's episode of Miami Condo Mondays, broadcast live on the social media accounts of Peter Zalewski and Jenny Huertas.
Welcome to Miami Condo Mondays. Happy Monday, Miami. I'm Peter Zalewski, condo consultant, expert witness, founder of the Miami Condo Investing Club. Welcome to the summer buying season, 2026 summer buying season. This is our first podcast of that period of time when many transactions close, as well as you get the heat, you get the humidity, and you get the hurricane warnings. This is one of those interesting times. A lot of people who spent their winter buying season shopping, many of those deals are going to start to close right now, so we should start to see some transaction uptick. But going into the summer buying season, we want to point out some key points to you. We want to tell you which markets are hot and which markets are not. We're going to be ranking the markets based on the winter buying season, which went from November through April. We're going to name names. We're going to tell you which is the best market in all of South Florida. We're going to tell you which is the best on the vintage side. Vintage are those condos that are at least 30 years old or older. Those are the ones that are under the greater scrutiny. The scrutiny that comes as a result of the Surfside condo collapse nearly 5 years ago. Next month in June, it will be the 5-year anniversary of that collapse, of that tragedy, where nearly 100 people died and a $1 billion settlement was paid out to the families of the victims. So going into the summer, we're going to tell you if you're a buyer where you need to be looking, and if you're a seller, where you got a pretty good chance of probably being able to transact your unit. Remember, a lot of people, they bought their condos 2021, 2022, 2023. At the time, what did they think? They thought that they could work from home. They knew they didn't have to wear a mask because Governor Ron DeSantis lifted the mask mandate in Florida, while other blue states, you had to wear a mask. Many people fled. They came down to South Florida. They figured they worked from home. You didn't have state income tax. You could enjoy yourself. At the same time, you were making more money, especially if you were coming from Wall Street or you're coming from Silicon Valley. And then you know what happened? That work from home concept, gone. And now people are being forced to go into the office, whether it's Jamie Dimon over at JP Morgan saying, I need synergy, or it's Silicon Valley companies telling, their programmers, come on back. We need to go ahead. We need to concentrate and we need to battle with AI. Now AI is creating even additional issues for people because there might be job loss, especially if you were a coder. So got a lot of unrest, got a lot of uncertainty, but what thing that is certain is we're going to tell you which markets are the best and which ones are the worst based on our South Florida Condo Association Financial Clip Index. We'll look at the overall market. We're also going to look at what happened on the vintage side. Jenny is normally here on the podcast with me, Miami Condo Monday. She's my co-host. She's normally here. She got caught up in a deal. Therefore, I'm riding solo. And because I'm riding solo, I'm going to give you my take on it next week on Monday at 4 o'clock when we do Miami Condo Mondays. I'll ask Jenny to kind of chime in on some of it. More importantly, talk to us about where she sees the summer buying season going. I'll share some thoughts as well. So let's go ahead and let's start to get into really kind of what's happening right now, generally speaking, in the South Florida area as we go into the summer buying season. I am looking at a list, and I'm going to share it with you shortly. Let me give you some ballpark figures as to what happened over the winter. Again, November through April. Typically, that's the time when people come to town. They come for an event, they come for a vacation, they come for a cruise. They get the bug. Next thing you know, they want to go out and they want to start condo shopping. As they shop for condos, they look around, they figure things out. Ultimately, they submit an offer. That offer, or maybe after multiple offers, it gets accepted. Once it gets accepted, they then begin the due diligence process and ultimately closing. It tends to be about a 6-month process, maybe 4 months or so. But basically, a lot of people who shopped in the winter, many of their deals are under contract right now, and then they're going to be transacting right now in the summer buying season, probably sometime around May or June or possibly even July. But if you're going to be closing during that time, that's one thing. But if you're trying to sell during that time, you might run into some issues this year. Why? We've got a lot of distractions going on. June, July, we got the FIFA World Cup. The United States, Canada, Mexico are all hosting matches, and Miami's got some of the matches. A lot of developers and sell-side brokers who are trying to get the highest price possible, they're all banking on the fact that people are coming to town. They're going to be watching the football or the soccer, and then after that, they're going to go out and look for condos, even though affordability is an issue. We're seeing sales go up. Why? Because prices are falling. Have they fallen dramatically yet? No, not yet. They haven't taken a dramatic hit yet, but it's coming. It's coming. It always goes that way. Typically what happens is sales will collapse, and then eventually the prices start to fall. This time around, though, it might be a little bit different, especially because of the rising costs associated with condo living, whether it has to do with rising maintenance fees, hefty special assessments, or the insurance, which we all know about how devastating that can be. So affordability. You all seen it in the grocery stores. You're seeing it if you have a car and you're buying gasoline, but that has to do with the Strait Hormuz and the attack by the United States against Iran. Different story, but ultimately the cost of living is expensive, especially if you're in a condo, because there has to be a lot of makeup work, a lot of repairs that were deferred for the longest time. Now suddenly the state of Florida is requiring under inspections that from legislation that was passed because of the Surfside tragedy, all of the details, the repairs that have been identified by experts, licensed architects, licensed engineers, they have to start to get funded, whether they come in the form of a special assessment or they're coming in the form of a loan. And that loan, if an association is going to borrow money, you're looking at interest rates of 9, 10, 11%, and even higher, especially as interest rates start to go up in the United States related to what's going on with the U.S. deficit as well as inflation. So we're in the summer, June, July, may or may not be able to sell. August when everybody goes on vacation, kids go back to school at the end of August. Also when the hurricane season starts to ramp up. South Florida, Miami-Dade County tends to be dead. Why? People are in North Carolina. They're in the Hamptons. They're in Europe. They're in Canada. They're elsewhere. They're not really in South Florida. Typically September, right after Labor Day holiday, which is that first Monday in September, things start to ratchet up, and ultimately they lead into what will be the winter buying season when you start shopping all over. This year, though, however, it might be a little bit more challenging because we have a very contentious midterm election coming up. People will be voting in November. There could be a change in what's going on in Congress. And because of that, you might see some investors sitting on the sidelines, riding it out, waiting to see ultimately where you're going to be able to put your money if you're an investor, because things could be changing. There could be, if it swings Democratic, it could be one way. And if it reinforces what's going on currently with the Republican Party, it could be another way. So expect a lot of uncertainty. I'll expect a lot of delays. Expect a lot of distractions. That's really sort of the key of the market. So if you were out there playing in the game today, you're taking a look for a condo, or maybe you're a listing agent, our list and our rankings are going to be able to kind of spell it all out for you and give you an idea as to which markets you ought to be playing in and which markets you should not be playing in. So let me finally give you a general overview from the winter. This is going to go from October 28th. We update the index, by the way. We update it on the Tuesdays. Every Tuesday, we're going to update it. So we're going to start the index based on the 28th of October, which is right before November 1st beginning. And then we're going to end the index for this conversation. It's going to be ending as of the when was it? Let me see here. I'm looking for my date. The 28th. So look at that, 28 to 28. So October 28th of 2025 through April 28th of 2026. And let me kind of give you the update and the overview as to what you should expect as we go forward. So South Florida overall for our index. And by the way, our index, it's a calculation based on active listings and pending sales. Closed sales data we all rely on. We all hear about it. The problem with closed sales data, it's from the past. It happened 30 days ago, 60 days ago, 90 days ago, 120 days ago, potentially, because it tends to come on quarterly. Then it has to be processed. It's kind of like unemployment numbers. If you guys pay attention to what's going on in the economy, unemployment numbers typically reflect where you were. If you take a look at an index like the Dow Jones, the NASDAQ Composite, the S&P 500, the Russell, any of that type of stuff, it's giving you anticipation of where we're going in the future, 6 months in the future. So if you guys want to get engaged about the economy, unemployment is the past and the indices are going to be the future. We don't like relying on closed sales data because it's simply disconnected from what's going on in the market. If you're an investor, you're looking for real-time situations, a real-time way to sort of identify what is in play. And as a result of that, that's why we created our index. It's called the South Florida Condo Association Financial Cliff Index. It's updated every Tuesday, and we do it for 2 tracks. We do the overall condos, and then we break it out, and we do one for the vintage condos, 30 years old or older, the old stuff, the one with the big special assessments, the one that we say, if you're going ahead and you're getting a milestone inspection, you should anticipate you're probably looking at $25,000 per unit if your building is up to 4 stories. And if your building is between 5 and 14 stories, $65,000 special assessment. And if it's 15 stories or higher, $100,000 special assessment. So again, overall, which is everything, and then vintage, which is going to be the older ones, at least 30 years older. So in South Florida, the index came in, and this will sort of be your baseline. You guys can keep this in mind. Remember the number 9.51, 9.51. That is where South Florida is coming out. This is point system. It's based on collecting the information. We launched this index on January 1st, 2025 to coincide with what we call the Florida Condo Association Financial Cliff. What is a cliff? A cliff's a situation where you're doing everything you can to maintain that condo. People around you start to fall out. They start to stop paying. They stop paying their maintenance fees. The property management company or the condo association has to make decisions. How do they maintain the same services at the same price? Or do they have to cut services at the same price? Or if they want to continue the services, do they need to jack up the maintenance fees? And what happens is around you, it starts to cave. And as it starts to cave, some individual unit owners do everything they can to kind of hold on. We saw it during the Great Recession. One of the stories I always tell is when you would walk in some of these buildings, every other light bulb would be unscrewed. Why? They're trying to save on electricity costs. They shut the pool. They didn't want to have to clean the pool, so they shut the damn thing down. They would get rid of valet. You didn't have valet service anymore. They would close some of the other amenities that were maybe in the building. Why? Because all of that meant costs. And when condo associations trying to get through it, they got to buckle their, fasten their seatbelt, and they got to kind of ride it out and get real kind of lean. And that's what you get with a cliff. So keep in mind, 4 deals in a building will basically reset pricing. That's according to a commercial real estate appraiser. That's what she told me. So be on the lookout as people start to run into trouble. They start to sell. They start to unload. Also keep in mind, as you start to see a increase in defaults or non-payment of condo association fees, somebody's got to come up with the cash. And where does the cash come from? Well, it tends to come from fewer people. And therefore, you have even more of a burden. And as this burden starts to build, this is effectively what is the cliff. So we call that the Florida Condo Association Financial Cliff. January the 1st, 2025 is when we started tracking it, and we've been tracking it ever since then, and it shows some real interesting stuff. So let's talk about the markets now. 9.51 on the overall market is where we're coming in for South Florida. Remember that? Miami-Dade County, 8.94. So what does that mean? That means Miami-Dade County did not perform as well as the overall South Florida market for this winter buying season of November through April. What about Broward? 7.82. 7.82. Remember, 9.51 is the norm. 7.82 for Broward, and Miami-Dade County, 8.94. And what about Palm Beach County? 13.29. So right there, looking at the index, you guys can see the hottest market around is Palm Beach County by far. The worst market is going to be Broward County and Miami-Dade County. Some are right in the middle. A lot of eagle in Miami-Dade County. Well, you're not necessarily doing as well as Palm Beach County right